team through his experience both leading associations as a volunteer and working for associations. He is also a certified Myers-Briggs type indicator instructor. So he's going to be figuring out who we are today and who's judging us. Originally from Minnesota, he received his Bachelor of Arts from the University of Minnesota and his Master of Arts in Higher Education Administration from the University of Denver. Greg previously worked for the Greater Washington Society of Association Executives, has worked with Leadership Outfitters as a trainer, and is the past president of the American Marketing Association DC chapter. Greg resides in Washington, D.C., and is an active member of the American Society of Association Executives, ASAE, and the Center for Association Leadership. Welcome, Greg Zick.
Thank you so much for inviting me. It's great to be here, and many of you I've worked with and at your associations, and I've met you around the country. I promise you we will end on time, because I know there's one thing you don't mess with, and that's lunch, right? You don't mess with lunch at 12:30. The good news is we can pick for some of those roundtable discussions some of the topics we're going to cover in this presentation possibly, so we can do some of those activities over your lunch hour. How many people have read the book End of Membership as We Know It? I figured that, and I know you're going to receive a copy today. So what I wanted to do is just to give you a little bit of extra. So I'm going to just give you some association trends, some reports that are out there. They're great resources for you to go to, and I added some extra things in as we go. So let's just, Independent Sector is a wonderful organization. So you can go to that website to get the full report, but recently they came out with their Art and Science of Advocacy report. It's, like I said, a good resource. What they found is the top 3 performers of organizations. They had a survey of over 500 different organizations where probably a lot of this stuff isn't surprising. You can feel good if you're on board with this, with your advocacy program. But sustain a laser-like focus on long-term goals. You all know when you're fighting regulatory or codes, those kinds of issues, sometimes it's a long-term fight. Consider the motivation of public officials, getting into that psychology, the relationship, politics, all that, strengthening those relationships was the second one. And third, galvanizing those coalitions to achieve short-term goals. So for you, that's working probably with AGC, realtors, those kind of things. So those were some of the findings from that. Some of the other things, just key ingredients, key components of a strong government affairs program, which I'm sure many of you who have these things in place, is just vision and leadership and planning. So having a plan and having some sort of action plan. I was with Mary Ann's group in Philadelphia, and there was a government affairs plan that probably included all this. Coalition building, like we said, working with those other like organizations. Agenda setting, allocating the appropriate resources for your government affairs program. High involvement in PAC with elections, getting your members into those appointed seats, elected seats, whether it's your city governments or county commissioners or different committees. Communications, and then mobilization of members. So those were the key kind of findings of ingredients of effective government affairs programs. Wanted to also introduce XYZ University. Maybe some of you have been following this website and the free newsletter that author of End of Membership as We Know It, Sarah Slatic, puts out. She recently did a survey as well on government affairs, and so it's not just Gen X and Gen Y. She also does strategic planning, and I know recently she just did a couple of our HBAs, so I'm going to be curious to see how that worked and if she had some new ideas with them. No big surprise probably to you. This was another government affairs survey, but 84% of associations find it challenging to motivate members to get involved in advocacy. You could probably say the same, correct? Right? 88% of associations would like a technology-based product with direct links to elected officials, templates, tools for members. Is that something that you all have here in Pennsylvania? Something like that? Excellent. Good. Excellent. So that was kind of a finding that came back with most. And this was over 200 association executives, and this was just recently posted to Sarah's website. Just a few more, and then we'll get into End of Membership as we go in. There's a publication that comes out monthly called Association Trends. I think it was about 4 months back. They did a pulse report. 70% of associations, so it was the number one way that they felt like they were going to make more revenue. It wasn't necessarily existing programs and products. It was they were looking for new products and services to increase revenue. So just thinking about how to be innovative, new lines of program streams. I was recently in Vancouver, and they actually allocated money for new programs and services and research to do that. So if you have the money to do that, that is great. Many of you probably have seen this, but I just wanted to include it because I think it fits so nicely with the end of membership as we know it. I know that you are on the EOC listserv, so you've heard a lot about end of membership as we know it. You've also heard about probably the study that I believe Jen was highly involved in, the future of the construction industry, Gen X, Gen Y. I believe it was around 850 builders. Some were members, some were non-members. So you maybe have seen that presentation, but I still think it's good to point out some of those key findings were with Gen X and Gen Y. And our Gen X, those are people that are between 32 and 48 years old, and our Gen Y, between people who are 18 to 31. But a lot of those members and non-members, 51% had bachelor's degrees. In terms of technology and communication, I thought it was interesting that 92% were using texting, and that was one of the preferred methods of communication they found from this study. When they were asked the biggest opportunities to make it to the next level, they were really looking to grow their business-to-business client base. So figuring out how you can make that happen is a real value of membership. Diversify marketing into new segments, and then developing business-to-consumer client base. So as we think about offering value. When they were asked the most important reason for joining the HBA, 58% responded peer-to-peer dialogue and information sharing. So that, just creating those opportunities for rich resources and sharing and networking. And then in terms of the pricing structure for dues, 56 preferred a monthly dues structure, which is interesting. I know that at the national office we don't have a system in place for that, but anecdotally with the EOs I worked, I think it was maybe this summer, they did their strategic planning, and what they were finding, the highest retention rates among a lot of HBAs they were doing the monthly. So if you can figure out how to do the monthly dues payment, that can work. Another great resource is McKinley Advisors. They're one of the top membership marketing firms in Washington, D.C. They're ASAE fellows, so they're kind of like at that high level. They put out a lot of economic impact association studies. Some of the things that I found interesting just from their latest study was 45% of associations experienced a more favorable budget and revenue than expected, so hopefully maybe you did too. Hopefully things are leveling off. Probably, maybe not in the construction industry related associations yet. 31% of associations are adding staff in education and professional development, so that was the highest kind of growing area for staffing. And 73% are spending money on website modifications and mobile applications. As I travel around and do action planning, I would say almost, I can't think of one association that's not spending more money on website and mobile apps. And I think Donna, my colleague, there's just two of us left, would say the same. So we're seeing that with our HBAs as well, that's truly a trend. All right, so I just wanted to give you a few of those. I know Jen, I think, is going to pass out the book. But before we transition to end of membership as we know it, let's just do something fun, just a little bit fun. All right, so this is an exercise called 2 words. Okay, so write 2 words that describe your favorite animal. Just for the fun of it, you can do it right in the PowerPoint. This exercise is called 2 words. So 2 words that describe your favorite animal. Now write 2 words that describe your second favorite animal. Now write 2 words that describe the ocean. The ocean. All right, now write 2 words that describe the sky.
What, right?
The sky. Now write 2 words that describe whitewater rafting. Whitewater rafting. Is everybody able to hear or not? I can speak a little louder.
A little slower, Greg.
Okay. Trying to get through.
I have old ears here. You know?
Keep that in mind. Hold it for 2 seconds.
I'll speak louder. Okay, so who wants to tell me the 2 words they wrote for their favorite animal? Go ahead.
Soft and cuddly.
Okay, so this is how others see you. For everybody, soft and cuddly. This is how others see you. Your second favorite animal. This is just for fun because you've been going since 9:30. Who wants to tell me what they put for their second favorite animal?
Small and hairy.
Small and hairy. This is how you see yourself. All right, who's brave enough to go next? The ocean.
Calming and warm.
This is how you see life. Calming and warmth. Excellent. What about the sky? Who wants to give me the 2 words they... Yes.
Blue and infinite.
This is how you see death. Blue and infinite death. Okay. What about whitewater rafting?
Exhilarating and stimulating.
And this describes your sex life.
Wait, I didn't hear her answers. What were your answers, Deb?
Everyone, this is Deb.
From Harvard.
I'm sorry, but we would have to have our
I'm
HR
selling my
person here.
kayak.
Yeah.
Come on.
Dad, that's on tape too.
I did have that.
Hey, Greg, does she get a sign to wear?
I was going to give her a free book, but everybody got a free book, so I'll have to think of something else to give you. All right, so let's dive into end of membership as we know it, and sort of the 4 key concepts that are in the book that are applicable to all associations, and have everybody still talking from this 2011 publication from ASAE that's a bestseller. Generational shifts, we're going to talk a little bit about the different generations. We're going to talk about niche and value proposition, and those 2 topics maybe will possibly spill over into your roundtable discussions over lunch, because I have some extra materials on that for people to dive into if they want to, if you so choose. Do's and the return on investment, and then culture and creating community. So those are the 4 key components. All right, so generational shifts. Let's talk a little bit about Generation Y. These are our 18 to 31-year-olds. Generation Y, at 92 million strong, is the largest generation in American history. So by 2014, 63 million of them are going to be in the workplace. So when we're working with our Generation Y, and I'm starting to see more and more as I travel, Generation Y members and their people are successful getting them on the boards and committees. You want to make the web experience simple and compatible with mobile devices, but I think that's kind of true for all of our members now, right? A lot of people are getting their information on their iPads, their iPhone. You don't want to have things 3 and 4 clicks away, which is something the national office is working on. A lot of our information is so buried that you have to click so many times that it almost takes a staff to assist you finding it. So you want to make it simple, compatible. Don't make them wait. They want speedy delivery. Understand that they pay constant, partial attention. So that's just a part of their world. They're multitaskers, right? They've always had technology. They've always had a cell phone. They've always been plugged in to social media. So that's just kind of what they bring to the table. All right, a few things, communication tips. Answer their why questions, or ignore them to your own peril. Emphasize the positives of doing right rather than the negatives of doing wrong. I've done this presentation a few times, and I've had a few examples. It was a builder who actually had the example of a Generation Y employee. I think it was his receptionist, and she had taken a message, and she didn't write down the telephone number, and he just simply asked her, was there a reason she didn't write down the telephone number? And supposedly that was more than she could handle. She actually went home for the day. So no, that's kind of a severe example, but he said it was a true story. Be positive, simple, rational, factual, and friendly. Coach, don't dictate, and be prepared for flexible scheduling. So just things to remember, these are our self-esteem junkies. They got a trophy just kind of for showing up, right? Participation, those kinds of things. When they're asked who their heroes are, they say parents, teachers, friends. Once again, they've always had cable TV, they've always had a computer, they had a cell phone before they were 16, they've always had the internet, they've been doing social networking since 10, so it kind of gives us kind of a framework. there and an appreciation and an understanding of our Generation Y. Generation X, these are our 32 to 48-year-olds, born 1965 to 1981. Some communication tips when working with our Generation X. Talk with them, not to them. Listen to them. Hands-off supervision typically works well. When delegating, describe the outcomes, but leave the results to them. Don't waste their time. So when you're thinking about volunteer opportunities and getting involved, they don't want to waste their time. Value their need to keep learning in order to be marketable. So that's something to kind of really hone in on in terms of value and member benefits. And give them challenges, not busy work. They're the kind of they're described as what's in it for me in the generation. So that was back at the time marketing of the year, marketing person of the year was you. They've always had cable TV. They got a personal computer when they were young. They got their first cell phone when they were between 25 and 30, and they've been social networking since between 30 and 40. How many Generation X do we have in the room? Generation X? Did we have any Generation Y in the room?
I would like a trophy for me.
There's my
All right, let's talk a little bit about our boomers. Falling in the range typically at the age range of 49 to 67. And the book really gets at this, because not just our associations, you probably see this at your state association, your locals, but most association generals are seeing this. Between now and 2030, 78 million boomers will retire, which marks the beginning of the end of the workforce as we know it. So most of our associations, I don't know if it's true for you, are still entirely governed and supported by the boomer generation. So really what the book is getting at is boomer-centric associations that refuse to change will be placed on the endangered species list and will likely be extinct by 2020. How do you all feel about that? Would you say it's similar at your association in terms of who serves on your board of directors, your committees, who's giving money to PAC, who's involved? Are you having success involving more and more Generation X, Generation Y, or are you pretty much still governed and supported by your boomers? What would you say?
We're pretty much split. Generation X and Y, we have a few boomers, but not many.
I have tons of boomers, and then the younger people have a lot of energy and really want to be involved, but at the end of the day, they're like, my kid's got a soccer game. So there's a disconnect between what they want to give me and what they're able to give.
Right. Excellent.
We've been making a concerted effort in the last year to bring in X and Y. We got 3 new Y baby boomer or Y members and 2 X's just in this board cycle. So we're really looking out. We talked about in the last session about the next generation of builder remodeler, usually the son, daughter. We've been trying to bring them in, and we're actually going through the parent. So we're saying, hey, you've been really involved. How do we get Johnny or Janie involved? And we've had a lot of success.
That's great. Great strategy.
We're doing that similar, and what I think is the interesting part is the dynamic fighting, some of the baby boomers that have structured GMM meetings, and the other guys like the networking, so it's interesting to see the policy, the debates over how they do their meetings and events as a result. It's fun times as a result.
Because you kind of have to play to both crowds, right? So you're
Yeah.
doing a variety of strategies, a variety of ways to communicate, a variety of ways to network, have events. Yeah.
We're the boomer side trying to go after the X and Y, so we're finding that we have to try new events, strategies that are more interesting for that group than the typical old events. We've kind of watched the calendar of, what the typical general membership meetings were and come up with ideas that would involve the younger generation and 4+ families.
Greg, we're doing similar to what my others at my table said with respect to X and Y, but more importantly, we have life directors in our association. It's actually more important to get rid of the older generation, my generation, than it is to bring the new ones on, because even when we had more X and Y on our board, our board was dominated by the older generation and the life directors, who really weren't contributing anymore other than their conversation. Now, it doesn't mean they didn't have value for us, I don't mean to say that, it's just that they dominated conversation to the extent that it took me 2 years to get affiliate members approved because my old guys were arguing against it. And until I lost 2 old guys, then I could get it through. So that's what I found is more, and you see it where you are, your organization is totally dominated by my generation, and you know, they're more resistant to the changes that staff and you guys promote to us, and yet it doesn't filter upward at NAHB. I mean, that's the problem that we see, I think, is getting rid of the generation rather than bringing the X and Y's in, not that we don't need to do that.
You bring up an excellent point when we get to the culture piece. That's an NAHB culture piece. And it's interesting how it's not true in every state necessarily. So some of the states really bought into the national structure of the life directors and past presidents on the boards and that. In some of the places I travel, they don't have life directors or senior life directors, and their governance structure at the state was never such that the past presidents were always involved for infinity, so then the locals don't have that struggle. But we certainly have that struggle at national in some of the places. Pennsylvania is probably one of them, it sounds like.
I think, if I may say something,
yes.
I think it's important to, I appreciate the way you presented this because we have been in meetings on this topic with members that are Gen X, Gen Y, and Boomers, and it can actually get contentious. And not simply in the way, because even the way we and I completely get it, but we're joking about, you know, you get a trophy for being here. Mm-hmm. Well, we need to make a joke about the old folks too, because you can diminish the value when we talk about it this way. So I think that's been very important in our association.
Definitely.
You're right, because it's the old people preparing the report that says, oh, those young kids are idiots. And they, you know, that's the tone of the conversation for the Gen X and Y. And then the boomers are like, oh, the good old days are ending too soon. You know, I agree.
So it's really all about that respect.
Totally disagree.
You would, boomer.
So it's really, like,
But there's value in every piece, and
exactly.
each piece, the value has to be celebrated, and we acknowledge that there are pieces that might make it more difficult to cooperate, but we can get past.
Exactly. And in some places, you know, that culture, people are working together just beautifully. In other places, I mean, they're slapping each other left and right. You know, like, if I spend a whole day with them, I'm like, I can't believe this, the way they're slapping each other all day long. So our boomers, some of the communication tips there, we really do want to honor their experience. They've really invested a lot of time and energy over many years. Ask for their advice. They have great advice. They have great experience. Speak in an open, personal style. Offer a partner to get the job done. Don't wait to be asked. You know, oftentimes they're looking for help. They're so used to getting it done for the organization. Don't call them older. I thought this was interesting. Use terms like mature, experienced, things like that can help, and it really can. That sort of language.
Do you happen to have an extra copy of that? I didn't get one.
I caught that when you said that.
There you go.
Thank you.
I meant it with affection.
I caught that.
What was that? What did you say?
I apparently used the word old in my description of them. Sorry. Meanwhile, Walt calls me the kid. So it's on both sides. That'll be over there.
With all due respect.
Exactly. With love.
So our boomers often put a priority on the business atmosphere, those kind of relationships. They got cable TV, just to, you know, technology is kind of a big piece of it. When they were between 25 and 30, their personal computer between 35 and 40, their cell phone more at midlife, and then social networking later in life. So it just kind of gives you an idea and an appreciation for, you know, the differences that are kind of coming to the table. All right, so these next 2 pages are good takeaways in terms of, we've covered a lot of this, but it's good information to take away. I think the communication styles is really an interesting one when you're, you know, working with the board of directors or your members, and you already kind of pointed out how the different generations, some people really like that face-to-face, in-person meeting, those, you know, the general membership meetings, or even board meetings to be in person. Other members would just as soon be able to Skype in to those board meetings, those committee meetings. They're networking differently in your organization. So communication, kind of trying to meet the needs of all of your different, you know, members as kind of wrestled with, bringing in more and more of your Generation Y, I think is critical. All right, this is a good takeaway too. The only thing we'll cover just kind of in the essence of time is why they joined. Oftentimes our boomers it was really opportunities to lead and leave a legacy. So just appreciation for that, that they really serve a long time and they want to leave a legacy. Our Generation X, kind of similar to the study of the builders, the Gen X, Gen Y, opportunities to further their careers. So that's kind of a lens into, they want to further their careers either through that networking and sharing of resources or that education and professional development. And then our Generation Y, our millennials, opportunities to learn from others. They really are open to that. All right, how about if we just have everybody sort of stand up just to kind of, we're going to do just a 1-minute exercise. Just stand up. All right, put your right hand up and point towards the ceiling. All right, to get a good stretch. All right, stretching it out. All right, what I want you to do is just start rotating clockwise. Okay, let's get a little exercise clockwise. And then just start.
Long way, Walt.
Gradually, just keep lowering your arms. Gradually, just keep coming down. Keep going in a circle. Keep going in a circle. Keep going in a circle just to get a little more exercise. All right, now look at your finger. Which way are you going?
To the right.
Counterclockwise? All right, go ahead and sit back down. Just,
I'm the right way.
there's no right or wrong way.
I was following you.
He told me.
It's just
You flipped your perspective 180 degrees.
it's just a chance to stand up, but also just to remember and reinforce different lenses, looking at things differently, different perspective, clockwise, counterclockwise, and remember and appreciate what all three of our different generational groups bring to the table of our associations. All right, switching gears, we're going to move into more of the value proposition piece. So that's the generation piece. For people who are interested in that, I did bring some other documents that you can dive into over lunch, some good supporting documents. If you're not, I think I still brought enough copies for everybody, so it can be a takeaway if you're interested in more Gen X, Gen Y, boomer. All right, so basically the book gets at the goal of all associations, obviously, is to be a dominant, membership attracting, revenue generating organization that stands out from others as the single best association in your industry. In order to dominate the market, what you provide must be incredibly valuable and the competition is minimal. So how do you meet that goal? So let's talk a little bit about niche. All right. We all sort of struggle, no matter what association we work for. Access to information is now free, right? So we can just, all of those reports I got for free. I'm not a member of any of those organizations. I went to them. I know they're reputable. And there's all kinds of studies that you can just download, get statistics and read, right? And so our members, it's the same, right? And in terms of education, I'm even hearing education is free. I work with a lot of the councils, that provide our different designations, and they're talking about how a lot of the vendor companies are offering comparable education for free that's just as good, if not better. They're pointing out that Harvard Business Review even has a lot of free education courses. So we know that that's kind of out there, and that's just a part of our world now. But we still, almost every HBA I travel to, when they talk about their vision, they want to be the go-to resource for everybody in their community for anything building industry related. So for the members, the community, for government officials, for the media. So that is a challenge, right? So what is your unique value proposition? We're going to dig into that a little bit further in this presentation, and then one of the possible breakout groups is value proposition. And once again, I brought materials if a group wants to take that on, or if you don't, you can take at least a copy of that. But what do you do better than anybody else? What do you do better than any other organization? What's your most meaningful program, product, or service? So some of those things that you might do better than anyone else, maybe for new builder members, you get them ramped up faster and sort of connected in. You might have the best access to information in a succinct way to really, time is money. It might be the easiest place to come to get the information you're looking for. Your response time to questions, maybe you have the staffing to really just deliver answers to your members, so those might be some of the things. I think the last question is interesting, so let's look at that. What would happen if the association ceased to exist? Just kind of, we're not going to do tabletop conversations, we're going to do that, but just off the top of your head, what would happen if your association ceased to exist? Yes.
In our world, our members would just be absorbed by other associations.
Okay.
I mean, unless you're talking about a blanket, all associations go away.
You mean they were just the neighboring HBA?
Yeah, well, not only that, but we have the Associated Builders and Contractors, the Realtors, the Chamber. There's so many competing organizations that have the same geographical territory.
For those who join, others probably would just try to go on their way and struggle without it.
Our builders would lose the opportunity to be in our parade of homes, and it's an excellent marketing opportunity for them. Now, if all associations cease to exist, that would have to come up some other way, but they'd be swallowed up by another one perhaps, but that would be huge, I think, to our builders.
Or realtors, or the local realtor who markets, then someone would fill those voids, I think, that it just might be by either an association, or like you said with education, it may be a supplier, or who then offers the an installation, education program or whatever. Like you said, we've seen that already now.
Yeah.
So I think that the voids would be filled. I think the question would be maybe GA or advocacy would be one that may not. But again, would the realtors take it on? Or,
Yeah, you share with the realtors.
would someone else take it on? But I think it would be, if we cease to exist, someone would fill that void in one way or another.
What about the question of what do you do better than anyone else? Let's right for a moment. What do you feel like you do better than anyone else in terms of your community, your competitors, the chamber, the realtors are the likely subjects, but sometimes there's other. But what do you feel like you do better than anyone else?
We provide consumers with easy access to our members, and we help them to make the connection with our members, which I argue we do better than Google because we can give real life examples of previous work or
Andrew's list.
right, those, I'll just Google it. Well, that's not the best way to meet them. So our home show, I think, is better than Google. I say that on the radio a lot.
Nice. That's a great example. Any other? Yes.
I think we do what we do better than anybody else is really to gather the home building industry professionals under one roof.
I would say for us, it's government affairs, for our members, the legislative aspect of it, what we offer them.
In that sense, and also it's education. Speaking for the voice of the industry, getting a collective mindset and then educating not only our members, but educating legislators and educating consumers. So, speaking on how the industry is impacted or how it serves the community, how it is gathering those folks and then serving as an education and voice.
One of the trends I'm seeing, and I'm hearing a lot of that, just that advocacy piece. And one of the, maybe my last 4 trips, it's just been a common theme. I'm wondering if it's true here too. Are you seeing more and more commercial builders kind of coming into the fold of your membership? It's been interesting just recently to sort of see that, but not necessarily.
How do you define commercial builders? I mean, you talk tract builders?
You just
Commercial.
Just-
National, like
Commercial properties, yeah.
Oh, okay. Well, some of our guys do that. They do.
I'm seeing just a sort of the trend, but I've been mostly out on the West Coast.
But again, I think it would be if ABC, if they're the only one there, because I think there's a difference there. If the associated builders and contractors are not serving their purpose,
Right.
and if we do it better than anybody else, then those commercial people are going to go there. If ABC or another organization is doing it better than us, word gets out as to who's delivering the product and who's,
Exactly.
I'm seeing a different shade of what you're saying. I had to really think about it. What's happening in our geographical area is more of our 100% residential members from yesteryear are becoming 50% commercial or 90% commercial, because in our geographical area, commercial's still doing pretty good, but residential stinks. Other than the small residential jobs, changing a screen door, fixing a window, but putting in all new windows, that's not happening. So we're seeing a lot of our members kind of move into the commercial side. So their business is changing and evolving, if you will. But I hadn't thought about that until you brought it up, so that's interesting.
I see that in our businesses as well, because again, that's what Triangle's road, if they can't survive in our region just being a builder, so that we're modelers, or they got into storage units, a large portion of our businesses, our members are the multifamily, because that's what they got into. They built the buildings, or they rebuilt a warehouse, and then they own the property, manage the properties. So we have a large percentage in the council for the multifamily, because more people, they've had to diversify in order to survive.
Exactly. So we're seeing those councils kind of come into play. We're also seeing, like, usually, along with that technology piece and mobile apps, we're seeing just that sort of branding, that inclusiveness of bringing others into the fold. So the value proposition, you know, the book really gets at not just joining your organization, but joining any organization at all. So really having to demonstrate your value in terms of tangible and intangible reasons to choose your brand, or maybe no brand at all, and not be a member of any organization and still be, you know, successful in business in your area. So a value proposition usually has 3 parts to it. Does it resonate? Does it have high appeal? It's much easier for us to do the first part, I think, the rational, what I pay versus what I get. We could easily, I've seen many of the HBAs kind of break that. I think on average it's $550 a member. I know the dues are different. Each state dues is different, and I know local dues, but that's kind of the average. I've seen a lot of great work in sort of breaking that down, and you can demonstrate that you more than pay for that $550. The other piece is that emotional piece. What success are they dying to have? What problem do they need solved? What keeps them up at night? What do they really want to be successful at? The second part is then, how do you differentiate? We talked a little bit about that already. How are you better or different than your competitors? So what are you going to bring to the table? Something must be happening. I mean, those members that I'm seeing are members of ABC, but they're also becoming members of our HBA, so something might be happening there, maybe in their coalition groups, in terms of just they're seeing the value. So how do you differentiate? I think the book gives the example of just, you know, a fitness, you know, the fitness center, the 24-hour fitness center. You might not even really ever imagine that you're going to use it in those off hours, but they sort of set themselves apart by being open 24/7. And then substantive, so credibility matters, so you do that through your, you know, demonstrating your success through government affairs and other things in terms of your credibility. All right, so there's an internal, it's a commitment that helps members strengthen relationships with customers, so that's, you know, member to member, but also with their customers, and then the external, the rationale for choosing the one brand over another. Interestingly enough, when I work with 20 clubs at NAHB, and those are a group of, you know, 20 builder members or model members or developers from across the country that are non-compete relationships that come together 3 times a year. They share all their business practices. They're the happiest group of people to work with because they're successful, they're making money. But they, you know, indicate that they believe they're getting all of these things, you know, from the 20 club, not necessarily getting them all from NAHB. A lot of associations I go to will say they feel like their members maybe get 1 or 2 of these things. But I do believe that these things communicate true value. So if you can get at demonstrating that you increase profitability for your members, that's something everybody would want, correct? To increase their revenue, to decrease their costs, just by being a member. So speaking kind of in those terms of what you do for them. Improving their business practices, making them more competitive. That kind of gets back at that Gen X, Gen Y study of our builder members. They really kind of reinforced that that's what they're looking for. They would definitely be a member if they felt it was going to help their business. Improve quality of productivity, another thing, who can argue with that. Learning a new skill, building a better network, gaining exposure. Some of you mentioned the Parade of Homes or just the marketing directory on your website is the best place to go. So it's great in your community, so that gaining exposure. And then protecting the landscape of the industry. That's usually the one that everybody says yes to, but as you know, and I know in Jen's introduction, government affairs isn't the reason people join, right? But that is definitely, people would say that yes, we definitely provide that value. When you look at these few bullet points, do you feel as though your association sort of you could say that you nail all that in terms of true value for your members, or maybe one or two that you would just like to highlight? Who would want to just share, give us an example of how you're sort of delivering a true value of one of these to your members? Anyone feel proud of any of those things?
She's gonna read the healthcare bill.
Alright.
I'll make something up if I have to.
Increased profit, I mean, I think through the builder rebate program, one thing our association does is I try to sign on 2 new builders to the rebate program, and I do all the paperwork for them, so to speak, going online. And my mission to them is to show them that they will get at least 3 times their amount what they pay in dues back within that year, and it's been very successful for us. So we have increased their profitability in that sense. It's a good program that, it's just you have to cuddle them and take care of them and get them through this next stuff. Once they're in, they're in.
Yes.
I would say in Philadelphia that we protect the landscape of the industry best in terms of government affairs and policies.
Excellent.
One of the things when we improve business practices, we do lunch and learns. They decide the topic, their council, and then they decide like a DOT program where they have some period and talk about what issues on a monthly basis. Just have a lunch so they can network, but then they're also throwing a topic out so they know that when they're coming to that class, they will learn with a networking opportunity to have a topic of that kind of learn as well. So it improves their business practices, and they decide what they are.
That's a great example. I was just in Bremerton, Washington, and I heard something like, when I hear something completely new after 6 years of travel, but I was amazed. It was around the Build a Better Network. There were actually 3 small builders on that board, and I don't know how we got into a discussion, but when they go on vacation, they're so strongly connected that their employees know that they can call that other person while they're on vacation, and they're okay with that other sort of builder making the decision and helping that staff out. And sometimes they share staff members to keep them employed, or if they have an extra project or in downtime. So I was like, wow, that's the ultimate. If you can have a network like that you trust your colleague to make decisions for your business when you're on vacation. So if you were to ask your members, if you were to recommend us, what would you say? How do we provide tangible value to you? As Jen, I think, said in her opening introduction, the best recruiters of membership are members, right? And it's their personal story of what they get and what would they say, if you armed them with an elevator speech, their own sort of elevator pitch. A couple of examples. Yes?
I see that, and some people say, maybe we don't want to ask them that, maybe they'll start developing members. And that's the thing that, I got said that to some folks, and they said, let that sleeping dog lie. You can't, because they're thinking about it anyways, when they get the bill. So you better start asking that and coming up with it. It goes back to X and Y and the boomers, they're like, send the bill. Ask them what they
Don't you think, though, after 5 years, I think most of the membership reports, I know our national membership committee and other places I've worked in looking at membership, that strong loyalty after 5 years, I'm pretty sure they would come up with something. I mean, the organizations that I'm a member from now, I feel like I probably will always pay the dues, even though now, for instance, when I get the ASA magazine, I have a hard time finding anything that I find helpful, but I still will pay my dues because of all they've done for me. But I think most members can come up with some value. Here's just a couple of samples that our membership committee has. So I just slid this in, it wasn't in the book. We help builders win business. We help companies manage their customer relationships. I help marketing managers find the best fit when they need contract creative professionals. We help real estate developers win land use battles. But it's got to be real, it's got to be theirs for it to work. So that is just a little bit about return on investment, value, niche, so that introduces that quickly instead of doing activities now. If you choose that, that could be one of your tabletop discussions. Before we move into culture, I'd like you to come up. There's about maybe 50 images up here on these different cards. I want you to think about the culture of your HBA. And so you either maybe have something in mind, that would just kind of describe the culture of your HBA, or sometimes, a picture is worth 1,000 words. Something might just jump out at you. But what I want you to do is come up and just take one card that speaks to you about the culture of your HBA. So go ahead and come on up. Take the card.
I want a card, I want the card. No, there's a gray and white one around. Yeah, that's our thing. Okay, he let go of it, well, you lost.
You got Captain America up there?
Well, better put a little powder in the back of your head because this camera's freaking out.
Is it running this whole time? Come up here. Jim made me tweet us when he asked me. Yeah, and we're gonna.
Dick is a culture. By the way, I have a pen for you.
All right.
Well, except being behind us trying to run around 30, that's what made it fun. My partner, what I was surprised was I was expecting a huge line of race car. I just came right off the exit. I thought we would be backed up, 3 to 4 miles.
So that's fine.
Right, they were sending it down to 7. I just was concerned.
Everybody goes up to one and then she says, no, I mean, it's exactly what you
Okay, let's come back together. You can take a few more minutes to select. But let's go ahead and let's hear.
Great wall.
I have to say to you,
What I'd like to do is just have you quickly share. We'll see if we can get through everybody. You can pass if you want, but I think it'll be interesting just to tell us what the image is and just very brief what made you choose that about your culture, because then you're learning about different cultures kind of around the state, some things that you think might be very interesting that you want to learn and build that sort of culture, or you might feel really good about yourself that thank goodness that's not the culture of my HB, that's that other heroes, right? So let's go ahead. You volunteered, go for it. All right.
Karen from Lancaster, and I have it looks like a spiral staircase. I'm choosing to look at it as it's going up. And the word I thought of was emergent, just because we're on the edge of a lot of changes. Kind of our board is reviewing our association model, changing with bylaws, doing a lot of different things in-house. There's a lot of new exciting things going on, and we have a buy-in from the board that is unlike, the energy is unlike anything we've had in a little while. It's very exciting.
That's very exciting. So we're at the crossroads of something huge. Yes?
the birds, I was like, Hitchcock. No. I start out with a joke. Part of our organization is, we are these birds on a wire, and some are going to take off, and that's one generation, and you can see some
them are, you know,
Flying
sort
around
of
these
deciding which way they're going, and there's a few that are on the ground.
Those kind of like.
So much like what Karen is saying, you know, there's a lot of
Yeah.
activity, a lot of excitement with our board, and we are bringing on some very newer members. And so that's it.
So, yeah, so culture can be a real asset and positive things happening at your organization as well. Yes?
I have a guy on a horse with a lasso, and the roundup is what kind of brought to me attention is that we're trying to provide value to our membership and at the same time bring in new members and provide the same value to them.
I have a man breathing fire. And the reason I picked this is because right now my association seems to be the only one out of this whole state that is having severe OSHA issues. And I am personally fighting OSHA for my association, so.
So that's a good
Yes.
captioning time. Okay.
Can I turn off the tape?
No.
It's some guy, and he's jumping up, like living on the edge, jumping off the roof. But he looks like he has a diaper on, so I think he's pooping his pants. Because
You
you're
might be
scared. And that's what we do. We dive off the roof and just hope to God it works, so. Yeah, I'm kind of digging it.
Yep. Thanks.
I picked a picture of an older man with a child, and coming into the association and not seeing much of what we've done or what we do. Through the home show, I see that our association is very community oriented. We included a lot of stuff in our home show and comped a couple of booths to nonprofit organizations like a foster care agency, hula hoops for Sandy Hook. So they're very involved with the community, and it shows in the home show.
Wonderful. Caring community. Yes.
I chose a gentleman, I guess it's a hand that's held out with a bird on the fingertips, and just thought we're a helping hand. We take care of those folks who are not very, they don't stay long, they don't stay still for long, but we're a helping hand to those.
I have a rainbow-colored 8-pointed star against a drab background. So I imagine that we are that bright spot in a very still monotone, drab economy for our industry.
That's sort of beacon
You were
of
the
hope and
shining
positivity.
spot.
Yeah.
How'd that sound?
That sounded good.
You
Better than
like
my
that?
guy pooping his
And
pants.
yes.
I have a group kayak, so there's 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, like 10 people in this kayak or canoe, and they're all rowing in the same direction, so they have a general sense of vision, but some of them are really, like their paddles in the water and they're pulling with all their might, and other people are like flopping through the air and not even making contact with the water. So I think that's very much our association, because we seem to all agree with where we want to go, but there's varying levels of effort to get us there. So that struck me.
Well thought.
And there's me in the front of the boat screaming.
Perfect visual. One or two others want to share? Or? Okay. So culture is really important, right? That tone that you set. The book, you know, there's a large section of the book of culture in terms of recruitment, retention, kind of that culture that you set. In most strategic planning sessions we don't throw out, you know, the word culture. It usually comes right from the members, and it's usually either it's an asset or it's a weakness, something, you know, you need to work on. So I heard a lot of positive examples of culture, which is excellent to hear, because sometimes people pick other parts in it, you know, but culture is what it is, right? Culture of inquiry, really important, that sense of mutual respect, trust, inclusiveness. We already kind of hit on this, but sort of that mutual respect and trust, you see that right away, you know, with the executive officer and the HBA president. You know, the whole board can see what that relationship is like, so that needs to be strong, positive, respectful, because that trickles down. And then, you know, the entire board, just trust and inclusiveness. The capacity to explore divergent views in a respectful manner. So that goes back to all those communication tips that I think apply just across the board as human behavior. And then presence of active feedback mechanisms. We want that in place. This kind of comes straight from the book, but instead of just going over this, we just I wanted to put in this little fun activity of these cards, but you already kind of talked about your association's values, the board of directors, your association's personality, all very important. Sort of in red, I guess, at the bottom of the slide, it comes straight from the book, is interesting. Culture matters because younger generations are driven by personal happiness and will refuse to engage in anything negative, challenging, or draining of their time and energy. But once again, maybe that could be said of anybody, right? Nobody wants to be in the negative, draining energy. But I think somebody even said it, that you were successful bringing in younger members, but not keeping them. I think it was Jim, because some of the board dynamics and now that you put in place, maybe not as many life directors are coming to the meetings. But just to keep that in mind in terms of culture, retention, and bringing folks in. So some of those key societal shifts impacting membership organizations from the book. The new programs and services that you might be offering, such as the one thing I already mentioned, taking monthly dues payments. Other creative things in terms of programs, products, services you've offered your members kind of through these challenging last 4 years. That's the one I hear the most, is sort of the monthly dues can help some of them just stay on board with your organization. We've talked about this quite a bit, the demographic shifts, just kind of preparing, getting more people on your board from different age groups, getting people involved in PAC, in government affairs, and those elected and appointed seats as you're trying to work towards getting your members out there. And then just rapidly changing technology, keeping up with that and using it to its full potential, whatever that means for your membership and your organization. So kind of in summary from the book, some of the key takeaways are understanding what your members want and need. Many of you often do surveys. Sometimes surveys aren't enough. They often talk about sort of radar up, antenna on. A lot of times you have to kind of anticipate or figure out what they need through conversations with your other colleagues or just reading. One-on-one, those conversations are so critical. Talking about what keeps you up at night, what are you dining to have, all those kinds of things. What are your goals? Develop member benefits that solve the problems for your target audience, and deciding who your target audience is. Assessing the cost to provide those benefits and get rid of any that don't provide that value or benefit. So many of our organizations, it's set up and ingrained, and your board likes to keep doing all the same programs and products and services year after year after year. But if you can do sort of that zero-based budgeting and really do those program and product service evaluations of getting rid of things that aren't being as utilized or might not be as effective for your members today, it makes room for new innovative programs and services. Put a membership model in place that both aligns with the way your audience wants to pay. And I know that's somewhat a little more of a challenge with our state structure, national structure, but if you can pull that off, sometimes that can be very helpful in terms of member retention. And then test those offerings and revenue models with members and non-members, and just be willing to make change. Change is difficult, right? Change is hard with our group. Donna and I do the Myers-Briggs type indicator, which is, many of you have taken the personality assessment, but all the studies show that just typically people in the construction industry are sort of those types that are resistant to change. And anecdotally, as we've traveled around for 3 years, we found that to be the same, and it's often enlightening when we have a board of directors of 20, and there's only maybe 2 that sort of really have that personality type of wanting change and liking innovation and bringing sort of that into the boardroom dynamics. So sometimes I can offer some insight. So I think this is sort of the final page of the book when you read it. If you haven't already read it, gets into there's 4 typical responses to change: denial, fear, acceptance, embracing. We have a more difficult time, I think, with acceptance and embracing in our association. The last line of the end of membership, as we know it, says change or die. There are no alternatives. And if you were in New Orleans, Sarah Sladek she ended her speech like that and walked off the stage. And I think most of us were like, wait a minute, we have questions. I think that is true, so we do have to definitely be open and willing to change. I think we're almost, at 12:30, so what I wanted to do is just, I think, introduce a couple of possible roundtable topics, and then maybe I think we were going to just brainstorm and report others.
Yeah, for lunch, we're going to go to the next room over.
Yep.
So we'll
we can, when you're finished, we'll move over there. Make sure everybody fills out their evaluation forms for Greg, which are in your folders. So if we want to move the tablet builder, we can go over to the room next door.
Should we do the brainstorming over there on top? Or should we do it now and move them over, or what would you like to do?
You want to come back over?
So why don't you do a little bit now while it's fresh in your mind?
Right.
And then take a couple questions, do some brainstorming, and then you can continue
And
over
we'll
there.
do it over there.
So while you're filling that out, I'll throw out 2 topics because Melissa and I had already discussed them. But you can come up with as many topics as you want. And I think the idea Melissa had is that you get to do at least 2 topics. But we won't pass this out now. But one of the things is value. So if you were really interested and wanted to talk to a few colleagues more driving down on value, I have a couple of handouts just on just the typical functions and value associations give to their members, and some sample value proposition statements, and sort of the backup, the document, the 7-page document you got from NAHB recently, that they took a stab at really quantifying the value of all our government affairs and our regulatory. So that is kind of with you. So at your table, you can kind of look through that and try to maybe come up with what your value proposition would be at the local level. So value proposition will be one of the round tables. So you can either, it won't offend me if nobody goes to that, but I do have handouts enough for everybody. If Generation X, Generation Y, if the boomers, if that was something that you found really interesting, that can be one of the table topics. Brought some handouts that help you sort of dissect your board, your staff, your committees, your membership, getting you thinking about the percentage you have of each, and then just kind of brainstorming with each other how to get the different generations involved, some background information there. So those are 2, so sort of our generational, different generations, and then also value proposition. What other things are on your mind that you would want to use your fellow sort of brain power in the room in terms of roundtables over your lunch hour?
Cost-saving ideas.
Can you repeat that one?
Cost-saving ideas.
Cost-saving ideas, great. Yeah.
Non-dues revenue.
I would throw a possibility of managing communications.
Managing communications, excellent. Other topics. Those are some great hot topics. Might be enough, but anything else that is on your mind? Looks good. Time to eat, maybe.
Do we want people to record and report back to us, or we're just having roundtable discussions?
I think it's always nice, because if you don't make it to that group to report back, what does the group like to do? I always think at sort of the end of the 90 minutes that you have, it is nice to hear back just a couple of highlights, headlines from the different groups.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
Table can have a moderator.
Yeah. So each table, you have a report.
I have some forms, some great idea forms, so if people hear a great idea, I'll have some walls that you guys can write.
Are we supposed to fill these out now?
Yes.
Oh.
Yes, evaluation forms, I'll take with our
All right, well, thank you. So we're moving